about the individual groups to which we belong in different capacities. We don't recognize the equality of those groups. What kind of difficulty does it pose?
It poses enormous difficulties because, in my view, not all groups are equal. I mean, they have different capacities, and we haven't worked out a way to reconcile our notions of equality with the realities of group differences. I don't have a solution for that. I mean, I can tell you what the attempted solutions are. The obvious one is that we deny what I just said. We assert that all groups are equal, and when groups perform differentially, that must be because they're being discriminated against, that there's something keeping one group down relative to another group. I'm not usually persuaded by those kinds of arguments because I believe different groups have different histories, they have different cultures, and they do experience different levels of opportunity. There's no doubt, but it's a very complicated story.
Professor Skerry, I'll bring you in just 1 second. Let's introduce here the notion of religion as one denominator of the category of racial or group identification. Under President Bush, where there has been faith-based initiatives, a lot of money given to these groups.
Yes.
He being the first president to open up the treasury to these kinds of things.
Yes.
Do you think he has used, or his administration has used, an equitable criteria for adjudicating these funds on the choices of religion, and can we predict which religion got the sort of a preference? And can any society in some kind of objective manner prove the superiority of one religion over the other in having allocated the resources in the manner they were allocated? So, to the extent that a modern society is a rational society, it's a secular society, separation of church and state, on what basis can we justify that allocation of resources, which comes from everybody's fronting money?
With regard to religion specifically?
Faith-based initiatives where people are giving money to churches and other institutions on the basis of religion and saying this religious group is better than others, therefore he gets more money, they get more money than the other, because this religion is better than the other. That's underlying argument.
Well, I'm not sure I accept that. I don't think that's the underlying argument. I think that the underlying argument is that the major religions in America are equivalent.
Majority religions. There's a difference between saying major religion and majority religion.
No, major. By specifically, I mean Catholicism, Protestantism, Judaism, and Islam. In terms of the ideology of America, that those are to be viewed as equivalent. Now, I don't know the evidence as well as I'd like to, but it's my impression, if this is what you're driving at, that when it comes to the faith-based initiative, that that Islamic institutions and Muslims didn't receive equivalent funding.
Yes, that's my submission.
Yeah.
For the review. You're a scholar in this area, you will look it up.
Yeah.
But we can see even in New York, the religious groups were given money when the state did not believe there has to be any funding of religious institution by public treasury. And that was, of course, not Muslim groups that were given the money, but some other groups. So the question therefore becomes, Professor Nyang, how do you understand the great promise of America, its separation of church and state, its promise of being a rational society, a postmodern citizenship, a notion where neither your ethnicity, nor your race, nor your religion, anything disqualifies you or qualifies you except your own conduct and character. And suddenly one is beholden to so many different labels and different impediments to one's performance in a society as an equal citizen.
Well, this is the persistence of ideology in the modern context, because I think if we go back to that whole tradition, I think the old Napoleonic statement to the Jews is being revoked here, because Napoleon told the Jews that we are going to judge you not as a group, but as individuals. It was a major turning point towards modernity. But of course, the revival of old tribalism, religious or ethnic tribalism, has come back to haunt us in America, because there is no scientific basis for you to say this religion, by virtue of numbers, is superior in terms of its cosmology to any other religion. There's no way you can prove that. Science certainly will not be on the side of anyone who makes that kind of point argument in modern America. But what has happened really is when we talk about groups and this dichotomy between individual rights and individual acceptance in terms of integrity, performance, etc., as opposed to groups' rights and counter-group rights, is the question of power and history. See, I think power and history are the primary reasons for that division between groups. So what will be at the individual level equal is made disproportionate, unequal at the group level, because when it comes to power, you're going to have differentiations and you're going to have polarization between powerless and powerful. You see that in Europe, between the royal families that lost power to the revolutionary groups. So you have completely new arrangements, new social formation, new organization. So in the American context, what President Bush did might very well turn around and create a lot of problems, because what will happen is, so long as some of the groups that are benefiting now maintain some kind of control, the moment the electoral votes begin to go the other way, and some other groups that were opposed to this dispensation, this agreement, takes power, you'll have a complete reversal of the old game. And so, I mean, like that is the way power is. So, you know, like what would be beneficial to one individual minister because he comes from the quote-unquote right church, he may find out that down the road, 10 years from now, he may be a great loser because power moves to the other side. So, and I think that's the problem we face with regard to power distribution.
I don't know that I'd reduce an explanation of all outcomes to simply to power influence, but because I think certainly in America notions of rights and justice also play some role, but I wouldn't basically disagree with your position that power and influence are critical here.
We'll agree, both of you. Both of those are excellent points. And let's continue that after a short break. We'll be back after a short break. Welcome back. All right, Professor Nyang, we have talked about many aspects of abstract notion of citizenship, assimilation, integration, debates about equality of individuals, debates about equality of groups, and so on and so forth. I think that sets up a framework, but let's now go to concrete issues. Let's look at the notion of the mosque in the suburbia of America. Okay, located the mosque on the suburban setting of America, and then tell us what are the changes that are taking place in the mosque, outside the mosque, and the interaction between the mosque and the environment.
Yeah, I think when we look at the concrete here, sociologically, we notice that one of the good evidence of the Muslim presence in America is the existence of what we call suburban masjid or inner city masjid. But overwhelmingly, the majority of the masajids are in the suburbs because it reflects the socio-economic development of the immigrant Muslim presence. And these immigrant Muslims have really created some kind of a toehold on the American cultural landscape. And this is very much captured in terms of architecture, that you have domes, things that were not visible in America 30, 40 years ago in any significant way. Now, if you travel throughout urban America, you will notice that in the suburbs, you have a large number of these, in the thousands now, around the country, in varying degrees. Some are very elegant, very developed, spacious, parking lot,